Good afternoon. Congratulations for braving it through what's now become a weekly snow disaster. This week's maybe 3 of them or something. My name's John Gabrielli. This is Introductory to Psychology, 900. This is a course about you. Okay? The entire course is what do we understand in a scientific way about human nature? How people's minds work, how people's brains work that supports their mind. This entire course is about what's the scientific way to understanding how people feel, think, and act in the world. And so we're going to try to say that we constantly think, you must in your everyday life, think about, why do you have your preferences, your desires, what's easy for you, what's hard for you, what's delightful for you. Why do other people behave the way they do? How do they think? How do they feel? And so there's a lot of realms of this that are tough to get to by science. But what we're going to focus on this semester is, where the scientific approach has shed light, in the way that we're used to in thinking about experiments and evidence about how humans tick. And as we go through this semester, we'll talk about the brain. We'll talk a fair bit about chapters from this book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, from Oliver Sacks. It was a bestseller. Even when it wasn't assigned for a course, it's a great book. You'll enjoy it. Short, really fun chapters. We'll talk about how we perceive the world, how we see, especially a little bit how we hear, how we think, how we feel, personality, how we differ from one to the other, and what we sort of like and how we behave in the world, development from childhood and infancy through adolescence, through young adulthood, where you are mostly, through getting older, where I am, social interaction, how we behave in groups and think about other people, and variation in mental health or psychopathology. And increasingly, we understand that there's a huge number of people who, at some moment in their life or another, struggle with some aspect of mental health. And then we'll focus a lot on not only the psychological aspects of that, what we said in terms of behavior, but also the brain basis of that, and think a little bit about to what extent the mind is what the brain does, to what extent the mind is what the brain does. And so for every dimension of being a human being that we'll talk about, we'll also talk about what we understand currently from the neurological and neuroscientific literature about how the human brain supports and contributes to different aspects of being a person. Okay. So, everybody who's works in a certain field thinks that their field is really, really, really special, right? So here's why psychology is really, really, really special. So it's really, really special, I think most of all, because every endeavor that we undertake at a university or in society as a whole, it's about people, right? Except for when we think about the rest of nature. But, people study biology, chemistry, and physics. And they think, right, that the sun orbits the Earth for some period of time, and then they think it's the other way around currently, right? Okay, so people come up with these conclusions, even though we're trying to understand nature. It's people who make certain investments in economics or behave in a certain way or vote in a certain way. It's people who make music and appreciate music, make art and appreciate art, read and write literature, right? So in all these dimensions, there's something very fundamental about what it is about the human mind that gives birth to these areas of inquiry and how those areas, domains of human experience are enacted. So my only goal today is to try to convince you in a number of different ways that we're not simple video camera in our minds, between our ears, recording the world in some objective, simple way, that even the simplest, most obvious things are interpretations of the world around us at many different levels of thought and feeling and perception, and that our minds, the way our minds are constructed, determines the world that we experience, that we see, that we act upon. And even very simple things that we think are pretty objective and simple, right in front of our eyes, are determined by inferences and deductions that our mind makes, weighing sources of evidence in the world and coming to conclusions about what's around us, what we hear and what we see, and how we think. So let's start with seeing. If your vision is reasonable, we say, if we see something, we believe it, right?